Hello. We got a couple minutes, but I figured I would take this time to maybe show you guys some of my Jesus pictures. See if I can show you this one. Uh, I'm having trouble. There we go. There we go. Well, kind of. Okay, there it is. Yeah, that's one of them. One of my favorite ones. And then I've got this one right here, classic, kind of English-looking Jesus. You see that in a lot of churches, though. That's for sure. Definitely not what Jesus probably would have looked like. And then my favorite one is this one right here. I just think it captures something. I don't know, a look in his eye, something like that. So anyway, it's pretty cool. I've got some more throughout the house, but those are just the ones that are in my office here. So, and pardon any of the mess you might have seen. I've kind of made this into a makeshift little studio with the right lighting and whatnot. But anyway, we got another minute to go. Hope you all read for tonight. It was a short reading. Anyway, actually, I'm going to read it to you in just a few minutes. So, well, it is 7 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm glad you've chosen to join us again. This is day 4 of our Holy Week reflections. It's Wednesday, Hump Day, and we've got Mark chapter 14, verses 1 through 10 for this evening. But before we get to that, I want to do a couple of announcements, a couple of things coming up. As far as channel goes, tomorrow at 5 o'clock, I'm going to be going live and taking some contemporary Christian song requests. If I know them, I'll play them. So tune in for that, and you can request whatever songs in the live chat, or if you want to, you can email me or post a request to this video tonight after it posts. You can put a public comment and request a song. I'll try and, if I know it, I'll try and work it up, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun. Do that for about an hour or so before the live stream tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Of course, tomorrow is an important day. Normally, we'd be celebrating our Maundy Thursday service, a service of shadows and, kind of stripping the altar and everything at the church. But since we're not able to do that, we have a good bit of reading for tomorrow. Covers the Last Supper according to Mark, which is pretty much the same as Matthew and Luke. And then also a reading from John tomorrow as well, because his Last Supper is really very different than the institution of the Lord's Supper that's in the other Gospels that we have. So I hope you will read those things. I'll give you the verses and chapters and verses after this video today. As far as other announcements go, sometime Friday morning, I'll post a video about my beard because between tomorrow night's live stream and Friday night's live stream, my beard will disappear. But there's kind of a history to it, and I've been doing it for quite a while. And so, anyway, if you want to hear a little bit more about that, I don't know if that would be something that would interest you, but some people have asked, and so I'll post online why it is that I shave it every Good Friday. And I don't know, maybe it'll be something that's at least interesting. You can get to know your pastor a little bit more. And then also, I want to remind you guys that we do have a Holy Week reflection on Saturday evening, even though technically, Jesus had accomplished his work and was in the tomb and waiting. There is a few clues from the Bible as to what was going on during that time and where Jesus was at. And so we will take a look at that on Saturday night as we prepare for Easter. One final announcement. Tomorrow evening at Emma we have a cross that is covered kind of tightly in chicken wire, and every Easter what we do is we set that up in front of the altar, and during the hymns during the service, people come forward and put flowers on it. So by the end of the service, it's all decorated up with flowers and everything. Since we're not going to be worshiping together on Sunday, or at least not in our sanctuary, we're not going to be worshiping together. I really hope that we're going to put that out in front of the front doors of the church along West Georgia Street. And I hope that at your convenience, between Thursday night and Saturday night, you'll be able to come and put flowers in that cross at your convenience. So it might look nice for Easter Sunday. I know it's supposed to be raining, but rain or shine, we're going to go ahead with a drive-in Easter service in the parking lot. And that'll begin at 10 a.m. on Easter Sunday morning. But please, if you're going to do the flowers, put them in before Easter Sunday morning. I really do want to practice social distancing and try and keep everyone in their cars, with the exception of me and our parking attendants slash what the biblical authors meant and how we read it as well and how we understand it. It could be that Jesus, there's nothing recorded in the Gospels. It could be there's nothing recorded in the Gospels for Wednesday of Holy Week, as Jesus was traveling from Bethany to Jerusalem each day. It could be that nothing happened, but I think you could read Mark's Gospel in particular and get you could see that this scripture for tonight explains what happened on that Wednesday. That's the point of the scripture for tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and read it because it's really not that long. It's Mark chapter 14, verses 1 through 10. And it begins with, "It was now 2 days before Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And the chief priests and the scribes were seeking to arrest him by stealth and kill him. For they said, 'Not during the feast, lest there be an uproar from the people.' And while he was at Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he was reclining at table, a woman came with an alabaster flask of ointment of pure nard, very costly, and she broke the flask and poured it over his head. There were some who said to themselves indignantly, 'Why was this ointment wasted like that? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor.' And they scolded her. But Jesus said, 'Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them. But you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her.'" And that is a prophecy fulfilled, because we just read it. Wherever the gospel is told, wherever the Bible goes, this story is in there, and what she did is there for everyone to read and for everyone to hear. And so it is a very simple story, but one of the things that I think a lot of people look at this and go, "Oh, well, this must have been Mark's account of what happened in John's gospel from what we read the other day." Now, if you remember, the Saturday before Passover, or before Palm Sunday, before Holy Week began, that Saturday night, Jesus was in Bethany in the home of Lazarus and Mary and Martha. And Mary came and brought an expensive bottle of perfume worth about a year's wages, and she poured it on his feet and washed his feet with it. And so there's some differences here in tonight's story. And a lot of people are quick to say, well, this is just Mark's account and who knows what the details were. A lot of people who want to discredit the Bible say, see, they couldn't even agree on this. But the difference is tonight, later on in Holy Week, Mark records that Jesus was in Simon the leper's house. And an unknown woman comes and pours a flask of nard, or a vase full of nard, which is a perfume, all over Jesus' head. So there's really two major details that are different than John's story, and that's not even counting the fact that this happens at different times in the story. And so what we're left with is was this a repeat? Was it another telling? Did Mark get some details wrong? And I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that's the case. I think that it happened twice, at least twice during this week. You got to remember what a following Jesus had. He had enough people. Now remember, Passover time, historians estimate that there are probably over 1 to 1.5 million people in Jerusalem. It is bursting at the seams. And Jesus had enough of a following that they were disruptive to what was going on in Jerusalem, and disruptive to the Pharisees, who wanted to keep peace and order so that they didn't, catch any attention or unwanted attention from the Romans. And so there had to be enough people who knew who Jesus was, who knew he'd entered riding on that donkey, who knew the things he'd been doing, who knew about what he had done in Galilee and in Judea and all the miracles and the healings. We read the other night in John's gospel that people were still bringing their sick to Jesus to heal them, and so there's quite a following around Jesus, and there is this fervor. Jesus seems to be getting a little bit more agitated, a little bit more frustrated, a little bit more anxious about what's going on. And of course, we know that he's anxious about the impending torture and death on the cross that he's going to have to endure. But there's certainly people around him were probably noticing things as well. And so, much like is the case in our day, people tended to do the same things. They saw somebody else do something. They said, well, hey, I want to do that. And so I think that genuinely another woman heard what happened in Lazarus' house. And she said, well, I've got this flask. I'll go anoint his head. And I think that's probably what happened. I mean, think about, look, we started this YouTube channel because of other churches that were starting a YouTube channel to deal with the COVID thing. We're going to do a drive-in Easter service because we want to meet together, and other churches are doing that too. So does that mean that we're, if somebody were to write a history of this time, this moment in time, would that mean if they describe two different events as being the same one that they got it wrong? No. Multiple times these things occur, or Jesus' donkey to ride over, or cutting down limbs from a tree and laying them down for Jesus to come into town. There's, all kinds of stuff going on. There was I don't want to call it a celebration, but there was a fervor in what was going on around Jesus at all times during this Holy Week celebration, or this Holy Week, journey that he was making. And so I think that this was a repeat of what another person had done. It's in a different location. It's a different house. And so I think that we just have to recognize that something was going on. People were sensing that this was coming to a head. This was coming to an end. We know that the Pharisees are plotting to take Jesus' life. So it makes sense that others also would be fearful for Jesus, and that that God might be speaking to others to go and do these things for him, and to anoint him for his burial and all that kind of stuff in a prophetic way. And so I think, Jesus was drawing crowds, and the people wanted to do something for him, to show him how special he was to them. And that's really the lesson here. Is that we see this happening during Holy Week 2,000 years ago. And Jesus was certainly taking all of the anointing and praise that he could get, because he knew what he was about to endure. So he was allowing all of this. He was, rebuking the disciples when they were, trying to stop this stuff from happening. And so he is perfectly okay with this. And so as those people found a way to honor and to do something special for Jesus, to let him know how special he is, that's really what we should be doing. What are we going to do to anoint Jesus for his burial? Or a better way to put that in our modern context, 2,000 years later, is what are we going to do to prepare for Easter, to show Jesus how special he is? What are you going to do different tomorrow and Friday and Saturday and on Easter Sunday? What are you going to do different spiritually? What are you going to do different physically? And how can you let Jesus know how special he is to you? Because that's what these two women did, and that's what others were doing in the Palm Sunday processional and all that. So what are you going to do? What can you do to show Jesus how special he is to you? Can you devote more time to prayer, or read through? Maybe you've never read through all 4 gospel accounts of what happened from the Last Supper all the way to the empty tomb on Sunday. Take an hour and read through those and study those and flip back and forth and compare them and pray about them and put yourself in the story. Watch some of the Jesus stuff that'll be on TV this weekend on History and Discovery. I'm sure there'll be things. There's movies out there that portray Jesus' life and his death and resurrection. And so, what can you do to connect and show Jesus how special he is to you? And so, that's kind of, I think, the takeaway. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. It's downhill from here. That's the way we live our lives, right? It's the work week's coming to an end. And for Jesus, it was downhill from Wednesday as well, whether or not he maybe didn't do anything on Wednesday and just recuperated, got ready, rested up for what was to come, or if this happened, in Bethany on Wednesday evening, as he was in Simon the leper's home. It happened, no doubt, just whether or not it was Tuesday or Wednesday, we're a little unclear about. But whatever the case, I think that, there's this calm before the storm that happens on Wednesday. So pray about it tonight. What can you do to show Jesus how special he is to you? What can you do to anoint him? And maybe we could take a clue from Jesus in some way, because Jesus said, you'll always have the poor with you. You can help them whenever you want. Maybe that would be a way we could honor and we could show Jesus how special he is to us, is by serving others. Again, all the announcements. If you tuned in late, I encourage you to wait till this posts in a few minutes as a video on our YouTube channel or over on Facebook. And then you can certainly go back and watch from the beginning and catch up on all the announcements. Tomorrow's passage is a little bit longer. It's Mark 14, verses 12 through 72, and that covers the Last Supper and the arrest of Jesus and all that. That'll get us into Good Friday. John 13, 1 through 35. It's a little bit different. It's Jesus doesn't institute the Lord's Supper. He has a different type of meal, according to John. And some different things happen that the other gospel writers don't record in their gospels. And so we'll look at those two passages tomorrow night. Again, that's Mark 14, 12 through 72, and John 13, 1 through 35. I'll see you tomorrow night. And as always, be the church. Wherever you're at, be the church.